welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. The 90th Academy Awards ceremony awarded Guillermo del Toro's creature romance The Shape of Water the big prize, but with no single film sweeping the categories, the night turned out to be a broad celebration of last year's best films. The Oscars serve as a nice end cap to the year in film, so just like last year on this podcast, we wanted to take the opportunity to do our own celebratory review here at the library. I've asked Becky King, our AV librarian, back onto the podcast to recap last night's show, talk about some of our personal favorites, and also fill you in on all the ways you can catch up with what you missed right here at the library. So welcome back, Becky.
Thanks.
So before we get started, I'll just mention that we're in a different space. We didn't actually get the studio today, so if it's a little echoey, that's the reason for that. But glad we were able to squeeze in and talk a little bit about last night's
that's
Academy
always
Awards.
fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you have any first impressions as far as...
winners or losers or the show?
The show in general, maybe? We'll start with that.
You know, the show, I thought... I actually thought it was long.
Yeah.
It seemed very long and really long periods of time between big winners. I liked Jimmy Kimmel. I think he tried really hard to keep things moving around.
Yeah, I think he had a good tone for the evening.
Herculean effort.
Oh, and what it was a hard tone to strike because you knew he was coming in with what we have seen last year with the Me Too and Time's Up movement, and before that, the Oscars So White thing.
Yeah.
So, and then the last year's mess up with the, Best Picture winner being called for La La Land. When it was, so he's coming in trying to host this
mess.
It's like simultaneously trying to celebrate the movies, but also acknowledging all this other stuff that's just sort of around the industry right now.
I think even in the opening monologue, he did a great job between, the normal jokes and, things that were really funny, and then also striking more serious tone when he needed to, and I think it was appropriate. So, yeah, I think he did a great job.
It was a milestone year for the awards ceremony, 90th anniversary, so they kind of had to bring that a little bit into the show as well.
I thought they did a great job with all the clips of past winners, both in the acting categories and the picture categories. Whoever does all that and somehow, manages to string those clips together in a way that they almost feels like the dialogue flows, does a great job. I thought that was a lot of fun. And they do a great job whenever they hit a milestone like that. It
makes you want to go back and watch some of those older movies, I think.
Right, and appreciate, that the film history that we do have.
I'm with you on the link, though. Full confession here. I actually went to bed before.
All right, Nate, that disqualifies you.
But
I don't know if they changed the order of the awards or what, but there was just a really, really long stretch where it seemed like not a whole lot was happening.
Yeah. Do you do ballots? Do you see how
my own
predictions?
Secret ballot?
Yeah.
I did mostly just for obviously the major categories, and I think I did pretty well. Although I think that Best Picture category, there were several that were heavy contenders, and let's just say my favorite didn't win. But, But, I think I did pretty well for the major categories.
Okay. I did not do very well. But I wouldn't say that there were any real surprises. It was just sort of an odd year where there was a lot of variety this year, I felt like because
in the
there
pictures.
Was in the movies and what was even awarded. No one movie won everything.
Right. In fact, I don't think any of them really racked up a big number of awards.
And then for a lot of the categories, it seemed like even if you were following the predictions, there was a toss-up between one or two, and it was kind of like a 50-50 chance or so.
The only thing, I think the acting awards were pretty much a lock all the whole, award season. So there were no surprises there.
Yeah.
But you're right, the Best Picture contenders, there were, several very, very heavy contenders that would have, been worthy for sure.
You said earlier that your Best Picture choice didn't win. What would your choice have been if you were sort of the Academy choice, the selector, and maybe not even one that was even nominated, if you had just what you would have called the Best Picture of last year.
Out of the nominated films, my favorite was Lady Bird. I was really hoping that Underdog would pull out a win. I was kind of hoping that might be a split vote between The Shape of Water and Three Billboards, and maybe it would sneak through and win.
Sure, yeah.
But not quite. But I loved both Shape of Water and Three Billboards. So I'm fine with the winner, but I just really have a special place in my heart for Lady Bird. It was just a really personal, fun movie that I think a lot of people can relate to. So
and it didn't end up winning anything.
No, I don't think so. I was
really
hoping
sad,
Greta Gerwig might pull out the screenplay.
I was hoping for Laurie Metcalf.
So was I.
You know,
I know.
Allison Janney, I didn't see her performance, so I don't know what to compare it to.
Right.
You did, though, right?
I did. You know what? And I was pulling for Laurie Metcalf the whole time, and I actually only saw I, Tonya about 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, I get why she's winning all the awards. But I still was hoping Laurie Metcalf would win. I mean, she's a Chicago gal from way back. So what about you? I know you're, what was one of your favorites during the year?
You know, I would have liked to have seen Lady Bird win of what was nominated. I was okay with Shape of Water. That probably would have been my next choice. I really like that movie. I think it's kind of a unique win for Best Picture as far as it being such a genre type of movie. I mean, it's a unique film in itself, but I mean, it's just kind of like a monster movie, you know? And
right. And I think, you know, because it was so incredibly well done, it did have a wide audience, whereas normally a film like that probably wouldn't.
Right, yeah.
So that just shows you how well it was done.
Exactly.
And the performances were great.
I was happy to see Guillermo del Toro take the Best Director award, because what's great about him as a director is in The Shape of Water.
Right.
You know,
it was his vision.
The vision of it all, the way he can create these, you know, special creatures that are just so unique, and the way all of his films look, you know, it's got such a great look to it. And,
right.
But if you were to ask me about my favorite movies of the year, so many of my top choices weren't even part of the awards ceremony. So
and
maybe
you and
we
I
should
have been talking about that throughout the year.
We should talk a little bit, maybe just generally speaking about the year in film. Now, my personal favorite is one that I don't think I would actually recommend to everybody, but my personal favorite was Darren Aronofsky's Mother with Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. And Michelle Pfeiffer gives an amazing performance. Ed Harris is in there as well.
Did you see that movie? That was a love-hate movie. Nope.
Yeah, okay.
I think people loved it or hated it.
Very polarizing, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just exactly like you want a movie experience, unlike the other one. You're going to get it with Mother for sure. I mean, in a way, kind of in a confusing sort of way, but a good confusing. And then another one that I really wish more people would see, or that would get a little bit more recognition, was a movie that we're actually going to be showing for our cinema club in April. Yeah. The one that me and you do together, and we're showing it here at the library. It's called Columbus, and Columbus is for Columbus, Indiana. And that movie, the director is a guy. He goes by a pseudonym, Kogo Nada. He's a sort of Korean-American director, and just, you know, two people, a guy and a girl getting to know each other, walking around a city, and just shot really beautifully. I just thought it was one of the year's best movies, and so I hope more people see it. And
that is out. It's finally on DVD, so that's available.
But how about you? I mean, as far as movies that weren't even talked about last night.
You know, one of my favorites of this year, and I know I was pushing it to you, and I know you finally saw it, was The Florida Project.
Yeah, another great movie.
Yeah, I loved that movie. I hope more people see it. That also is out on DVD already, so make sure you check it out. It is the story really of just a little girl and her mother. They live on the outskirts of the rundown hotels right outside of Disney World in Orlando. And it's one of those pictures that just sneaks up on you emotionally. It's, just this little girl and her friends kind of running wild one summer with no oversight from their parents or very little. And the hotel manager, who is played by Willem Dafoe, who was nominated for supporting actor.
I really was pulling for him. I would have loved to have seen him.
Great performance, an unusual performance from him.
Yeah, great character too.
Right.
I mean, it's that's sort of like the glue of the. I mean,
right. He was the only person that even remotely was paying attention to those kids. But it's one of those movies that ambles along and just following their daily lives, and you kind of wonder where it's going, and all of a sudden it just reaches this emotional climax at the end that will break your heart. And the performances from these unknown actors, especially the little 6-year-old girl who plays Mooney, oh my goodness.
She's incredible.
She has a future if she decides to stay in acting. She, again, just what an emotional ending that was. So that was my favorite, I think, and I don't think it got the love that it deserved. I was hoping it would get a Best Picture nod, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Another one that you and I talked about too, which I really loved, and it did get some recognition, was Mudbound. That's streaming on Netflix right now. It was released in the theaters, which is why it was eligible for some awards. And the cinematographer was nominated, the first woman ever nominated for cinematography and things like that. Mary J. Blige as a supporting actress.
Right.
Another film that deserved a wider audience.
It is. Now, with all those Netflix movies, because there was a lot of documentary features that are on Netflix as well, it seems to be kind of a new player in the Oscars game. And one of the hard things for the library is that it's Netflix, so we don't always get the DVDs, Blu-rays. But one thing I'll mention, if some people at the library need to catch up with Mudbound, or Strong Island is another one that was a Netflix documentary that I was really rooting for. I loved that documentary. But we circulate Roku boxes that have Netflix access, so you can always check out one of those or get on the list if there's a wait list for it.
And definitely worth it in those two instances.
Of course.
For sure.
Yeah.
Besides all the other stuff that's available there.
Well, the winner actually, the documentary category was Icarus, and that's another Netflix documentary that you'd have to get through Netflix as well. So it is interesting to see that change. You know?
I mean, they're a player, and they're very stingy with when and how soon they release their projects.
Yeah.
Much longer wait usually for those types of things when they ever do see the light of DVD. So
that's too bad.
Yeah.
Because again, you're right. I mean, Mudbound was such a powerful movie.
We didn't even say what it was about, I guess, but it takes place right after World War II, and it's two families, one African American, one white, that they live on the same property, basically. One family working for the other. I guess they're tenant farmers at that point, and just their different experiences in coming home after the war and how their families interrelate. Really powerful.
Set in the American South,
right?
So there's a lot of that racial tension there,
right.
Of course, and when you were talking about the cinematography, all of it has this really kind of earthy tone.
It's beautiful, and it's a character in the film. You know what I mean? It lends such texture and everything to the film.
So one movie that I caught up right before the awards ceremony, and I was so glad I did, was I actually saw Coco, the Pixar movie, and that took home anime. I wasn't surprised it took home anime, but it also took home Best Original Song.
Yep.
I would rank that right up there with some of the best.
All their others?
With some of the best Pixar movies. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen that one, but I did see Loving Vincent, which is probably the opposite side of the spectrum, and an adult animated movie, which was amazing.
Well, the process alone,
right?
An oil-painted animated movie,
right?
Every
and
single
old school,
frame,
where every frame is. I mean, it boggles the mind how much time that took.
It's Vincent Van Gogh, but it's almost more like a murder mystery or something like that. Not right. It's a guy who's trying to piece together the last few days few weeks of his life. Vincent Van Gogh's life, where he is said to have committed suicide, but you're getting different perspectives of all the people who were kind of around him at that time. And again, like you said, oil painted every single frame, so it all looks like a Vincent Van Gogh style painting. Yeah.
And I think what I enjoyed at the end too was all these characters that populate the film you see in his actual work at the end.
Oh, that's right.
You know, so that was pretty neat how they tied everything together.
I was really happy to see Jordan Peele get the award for screenplay. And just get out being present at the Oscars. I mean, and it's a movie that, just because of its genre, just kind of being a thriller horror thing,
usually get ignored.
Yeah, they totally get. And also, it came out so early. It came out back in the spring, I want to say, last year. So, just to see that kind of hang around a little bit longer and get on more people's radar,
gain traction.
It was such a great experience to see in the theater. But if you have, obviously now it might be too late to catch it in the theater. But
it's been out on DVD actually.
We have
for
it.
A while.
Yeah, it's probably not even hard to get anymore for the library.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, to me, that's kind of like a must see of the last year, because I think that movie is going to be very influential over the next few years of what type of things Hollywood even finances and things.
What types of movies get made.
Yeah, and to have such a smart horror movie.
And also filled with great performances.
Yeah.
All throughout.
Speaking of performances, as far as all the acting awards go, did you have any surprises or any comments you wanted to make about who actually won?
Not really. Again, I think many worthy. I think Gary Oldman was a slam dunk for Darkest Hour, just because, that is a real tour de force. Also in the Best Actress category, Frances McDormand was amazing in 3 Billboards. She was basically Frances McDormand. Even her acceptance speeches and stuff like that throughout the award season, she's almost like she's just in character.
Frances McDormand, her character in that movie and her in real life, it's just so fierce. I remember we saw 3 Billboards, me and my wife, and I remember we were walking out and my wife just goes, "I just want to be her."
Probably everybody does.
We all want to be Frances McDormand.
You tell she just doesn't care. You know what I mean?
Tiffany Haddish and Maya Rudolph coming out to present.
They were excellent.
What my favorite part as far as the show goes. And I had actually just watched Girls Trip the night before because so many people were talking about her performance in particular, Tiffany Haddish's performance. Yeah. And I got to say, as far as performances of last year, that performance was so hilarious, and one of the funniest performances of last year.
She's such a personality, and they were great together.
And putting her on stage with Maya Rudolph, you can't go wrong.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The other presenting pair that I really enjoyed was Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah.
And then Lupita Nyong'o.
Oh, yeah.
They were perfect together, too. I thought they were very funny. And actually, his movie this year, The Big Sick, was one of my favorites, too. I mean, it got a little attention for screenplay. He wrote the screenplay with his real-life wife. And so clever, just so clever and fun. And again, another kind of heartfelt, but really comic movie.
Yeah,
and perfect. I mean, it was like the perfect summer comedy.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so we've mentioned a lot of movies from last year, and of course, we like to try to have all of those available for people to check out at the library. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe just the different ways that people could catch up with some of these titles if they haven't seen them, and maybe which ones are already available and which ones we're kind of waiting for?
The good news is that all of the nominated pictures are either, in the library or on order. So make sure you're on the hold list. There's lots of holds for them, but, they're all going to be available fairly soon. And the few that aren't in the library yet, the release dates are coming soon. And we always talk about this. Make sure you check out the free movie matinees that we show at the libraries. Cook Park Library on Thursdays at 1:30 and Aspen Drive Library on Fridays at 1:30. This month especially, we have a great lineup.
It's a grand slam.
I know. So last week we actually showed 3 billboards. We've got Lady Bird coming up and The Shape of Water. And, next month will be, In the Darkest Hour. So next month we'll be trying to catch up with the other ones as they're released.
Great.
So make sure you keep an eye on that. That's, free popcorn, free movie. Nothing better than that. And like you mentioned with the Roku, check out the Netflix features. Soundtracks are in the library, and most of them are on Hoopla also. Usually the documentaries and the foreign films come out just a little bit later. I think they use the Oscar buzz to get more people into the theater. So sometimes those arrive a little bit later. But just keep an eye on our online catalog for the the ones that aren't in yet.
All right. Well, it was a fun time. Well, a little slow watching the actual ceremonies last night, but it was really fun to sit here and talk a little bit about the movies and the year in movies with you, Becky. So thanks a lot for coming back on the podcast.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Nate.
Okay, so Becky just gave you all sorts of different ways that you can check out the movies here at the library. If you'd like to jump on right now and browse for those movies and maybe put on some holds, you can do that by going to our website. Our website is www.cooklib.org and search for those titles in the catalog. While you're on our website, we always like to recommend that you check out our blog. Our blog is called Shelf Life, and it's where we often will talk about the books that we're reading, and we'll also share some local history stories, genealogy advice, and much, much more. That blog can be found at shelflife.cooklib.org, and it's also where you can check out some of our past episodes of this podcast, because that's where we host the podcast. We're so happy that you're listening to this podcast, and we could always use a little bit of help spreading the word. So if you don't mind, keep on sharing it with your friends and family. And if you really want to help us out, leave us a nice, kind rating over on Apple Podcasts. I also want to throw out there that we also want to hear from you. You can always talk to us on Twitter. The library's handle is @CookLibrary. Or you can send us an email. The email to send that to is webmaster@cooklib.org. So we will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.